for me today. The planet Earth.
What's happening?
It's an attack!
Pathetic Earthlings! Who can save you now?
Actors to finish his lines. The main one was Peter Merringer, but several others filled in too. Nobody watching the movie noticed it back then, but almost all of Sam's voice in the final cut wasn't really him. It was a strange situation. The star of a 27 million movie had his voice replaced without the public even realizing it. Years later, it became the focus of a documentary called Life After Flash. Sam had been in his early 20s, starring in one of the most expensive sci-fi films of the time, and yet his real voice was barely in it. Things behind the scenes were even more rushed and chaotic with the soundtrack. Queen had been asked to create the music, but it didn't start smoothly. Director Mike Hodges wanted Queen from the beginning in 1979, but Dorrentius thought they were too over the top. Still, the band agreed, even though they were already working on their album, The Game. That meant they had two big projects happening at once. They spent the summer of 1979 in Munich recording both, and by early 1980, they were still working on Flash Gordon's music. After finishing a US tour that lasted through October 1980, they had only the month of November to complete the entire soundtrack. It was a race against time. They finished it just weeks before the movie hit theaters. Because of that crazy schedule, Queen even had to delay releasing their greatest hits album for a whole year. Money was bleeding fast. The movie was originally planned to cost around $15 million, but by the end, it had nearly doubled. Some sources list the final cost at $20 million, while others say it reached $27 to $30 million. That made it 3 times more expensive than Star Wars, which had changed cinema only a few years earlier. The reasons were endless. Sam Jones's sudden exit meant they had to redo scenes and fix the sound. The costumes and sets were massive. They even took over most of M.I. Shepperton's studios and filmed at an airplane hangar in Surrey. The crew came from all over the world, and because the script kept changing, the delays just kept growing. But when it finally hit screens, it only earned about $27.1 million in the US. It barely covered the cost. And for a film with that kind of budget, it was seen as a big failure. The truth behind Sam Jones's disappearance is even more dramatic. In December 1979, the cast and crew were sent home for the holidays. When they came back in January 1980, Sam didn't. He went back to Los Angeles and refused to return. De Laurentiis later said it might have been the first time in Hollywood history that a star walked out of a $30 million movie halfway through. Director Mike Hodges was stuck. He told Dino they would keep filming with the best stand-in they could find. And that's exactly what they did. The final weeks of production were completed without Sam. Key action scenes, special effects, and even dialogue recordings were done with other people pretending to be him. It wasn't just about a disagreement over pay. Sam had gotten into real fights on set. According to Dino's biography, he was constantly getting into trouble. One day, he ended up with a big scrape on his face that needed surgery. Dino rushed into the operating room and told the doctors to fix it in a way that wouldn't ruin the film. He was worried the injury would mess up continuity. That's how desperate things had become. The producer of the movie was standing next to doctors just to protect the final shots because Sam wasn't around anymore. The production had to get creative. They brought in a team of stuntmen and actors to play his role in different scenes. Director Mike Hodges had to shoot around it using wide angles and shadows. They filmed flying scenes and fight sequences without Sam at all. The editing team did such a good job hiding the switch that no one could tell. By the time the movie came out, there was actually more footage of the stand-ins than of their real actor. But nobody noticed. The full truth didn't come out until years later, when crew members started speaking up and behind-the-scenes footage was finally released. When Max von Sydow stepped onto the Flash Gordon set in 1980, he probably had no idea he was about to become a prisoner inside his own costume. He was playing Ming the Merciless, and the costume they gave him was something no actor should have had to wear. It weighed over 70 libby. Just imagine trying to act while carrying something heavier than a full suitcase. The costume had layers upon layers. A huge fiberglass helmet, thick armor, quilted jackets, gold-painted plates, even fake fur. It looked stunning, but it was torture. Max was 54 years old at the time, and he could only stand in it for a few minutes before needing a break. So scenes that should have taken an hour stretched into entire days. Every time he tried to say his lines, they had to pause and wait for him to rest. The man who played the cruel emperor was slowly breaking down inside his own golden prison. But Max wasn't the only one suffering. The silver paintist during filming became a serious health risk for everyone involved. One of the most dangerous moments came during the spinning platform fight scenes. The spinning surface was coated in metallic silver spray paint, and during every take, the actors got completely covered in it. Sam J. Jones and the others had to stop filming constantly just so the crew could scrub the paint off their skin. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was toxic. The spray paint used in 1980 still had heavy metals and strong solvents that were never meant to touch human skin. It caused irritation, breathing problems, and maybe worse over time. Yet, the production kept pushing forward, brushing off the health risks like they were nothing. The costumes were a nightmare all on their own. The legendary Italian designer Danilo Donati was brought in to create both the clothes and the sets. He had already won Oscars before, and he was known for his over-the-top ideas. But his vision for Flash Gordon caused complete chaos. He designed over 600 costumes, many of them filled with gold trim, high collars, heavy embroidery, and stiff materials that made it nearly impossible to move. His style worked beautifully on camera, but not in real life. And because the filming happened in England instead of Italy, he couldn't work with his usual team. He had to rely on a British company that mostly made costumes for music videos. The results looked stunning, but actors were stuck in tight, hot, heavy outfits that turned basic movements into battles. Even just sitting down required help. Ornella Moody, who played Princess Aura, had it just as bad. Her costumes were some of the most detailed in the film. Every outfit had a mix of bold colors, strange shapes, and long jewelry that made her look otherworldly. But moving in them was almost impossible. Her red suit and other outfits were so tight and complex that she needed help just to stand or walk. Costume changes became full events that had to be carefully planned. Whenever she was on set, the team had to choreograph every move around the limits of her outfit. She looked like a queen, but behind the scenes, she was trapped. The worst part is that many of the 600 costumes were never even used. So much money and time went into creating these detailed looks, only for them to sit untouched in wardrobe. Flash Gordon was supposed to be a $27 million sci-fi adventure. But even the director, Mike Hodges, later said it felt like the most expensive improvised movie ever made. The script changed constantly, so costumes were built and then never seen on screen. It wasn't just a waste of money. It was a huge waste of artistic effort. Beautiful costumes meant foreground scenes ended up in storage, because nobody knew what they were doing. Heat became another enemy on set. One of the most unforgettable sets was Sky City, a bright, glowing world that required massive lighting setups. But those lights turned the entire place into an oven. They couldn't use air conditioners because the sound equipment would have picked up the noise. So the actors, especially Brian Blessed, who played Prince Voltan, had to wear thick feathered costumes under blinding lights with no cooling. Some of them lost real weight during filming just from sweating so much. The only thing keeping that set alive was the actors' willpower. Then came one of the most dangerous setups in the entire film, the rotating death platform. In the movie, it looked like a cool spinning fight with rising spikes, but those spikes were real. They could actually cut skin if you weren't careful. The entire platform was motorized and tilted mid-scene, so every second of the fight had to be timed perfectly. Timothy Dalton, who played Prince Baron, had to rehearse for weeks just to get it right without getting hurt. Below the platform was a pink cloud effect meant to look like death waiting below. In real life, the danger was already right under their feet. One wrong move and someone could have been seriously injured. The flying Hawkmen were supposed to be one of the most exciting parts of the movie, but the flying effects turned into nightmares of their own. Dozens of performers were strapped to wires that constantly malfunctioned. Sometimes the wires snapped. Sometimes they got tangled and the wind machines used to simulate flying made things even worse. People were hanging in midair, unable to move while the crew rushed to lower them down safely. Brian Bless, who did most of the flying scenes, was especially at risk. Every flying moment looked fun on screen, but felt like a rescue mission behind the scenes. Moreover, the $27 million production was in such disarray that actors were getting their lines just minutes before filming. Sam J. Jones, who played Flash, remembered how he was thrown from one scene to the next without any time to prepare. He didn't have time to memorize lines, and the script kept changing so fast that it didn't even matter. Director Mike Hodges joined only 3 weeks before filming started. The original director Nicholas Roeg had worked on it for over a year, but suddenly left. The crew barely spoke the same language, with British and Italian workers struggling to communicate. For me today, the planet Earth. What's happening? It's an attack. Pathetic Earth. Who can save you now? Flash Gordon almost never existed. But the reason why will shock you. In the 1970s, a young director desperately wanted to make this movie. He was turned down, so he went home and created something else instead. That something became the biggest sci-fi franchise in history. But that's not the freaky part. The freaky part is what happened to the actor who finally got to play Flash Gordon. His voice was stolen. For 40 years no one knew. Most of what you hear isn't really him speaking. What really happened behind those colorful sets will disturb you. In the early 1970s, George Lucas was chasing a dream. He had just found success with American Graffiti and wanted to bring his childhood obsession to life. Growing up in Modesto, California, he was hooked on the old Flash Gordon serials full of rocket ships, strange planets, and daring heroes. He went straight to Kingfisher's syndicate and tried to buy the rights to make his own Flash Gordon film. But he was too late. Dino De Laurentiis had already grabbed them. Lucas tried negotiating, but De Laurentiis wasn't interested. That one rejection quietly changed the future of movies forever. Lucas went home and started building something new from scratch. In 1977, that dream turned into Star Wars. If De Laurentiis had said yes, Star Wars might never have existed. And what's even more painful is that Flash Gordon, the very thing Lucas once wanted, ended up living in the shadow of what he created instead. There was someone else who could have brought magic to Flash Gordon, but didn't. Federico Fellini, the famous Italian director, had grown up with those same comic strips. Back in 1938, when Mussolini banned American comics, Italy started making underground versions. Rumors say that during World War II, Fellini secretly wrote some of those stories himself, helping to keep Flash Gordon alive. Some experts doubt it, but Fellini always spoke with love about that character. In his 1976 book, he even said he wanted to use the colors from those old comics in his own films. When De Laurentiis asked him to direct Flash Gordon, everyone thought it was a perfect match, but Fellini turned him down. No one expected that, and De Laurentiis didn't take it well. To get even, he came up with a quiet insult that millions of people have watched without knowing. In the final 1980 movie, Princess Aura had a small pet named Fellini. The character was played by Deep Roy, and it wasn't meant as a tribute. It was a dig. De Laurentiis named a tiny, obedient creature after the famous director who rejected him. That strange little name was his way of getting the last word, and he made sure the character appeared in scene after scene. It was a permanent public insult hidden in plain sight. After Star Wars exploded in 1977 and took over the world, De Laurentiis panicked. He rushed Flash Gordon into production and poured money into it. Reports say the budget was around $27 million, a huge amount back then. He wanted to prove that he could make something just as big, just as thrilling, just as loved. The sets were massive. They filmed at Elst Street and Shepperton Studios in the UK. Danilo Donati, a famous designer, built wild, colorful sets. But even from the start, the project felt like a rushed answer to challenge that had already been won. Flash Gordon was being made not because someone believed in it, but because someone wanted revenge. The director who ended up making it wasn't even the first choice. Mike Hodes only got the job after De Laurentiis fired Nicholas Roeg, who had spent a whole year preparing. Sergio Leone also walked away, saying, the script didn't respect the original comics. Haja stepped into chaos. Thetone was confused. Screenwriter Lorenzo Sample Jr. later said that they kept bouncing between funny and serious, and in the end, it didn't work. Hodes didn't really control the movie. De Laurentiis did. Things got so bad that the lead actor, Sam J. Jones, walked off set before the movie even finished. His voice had to be dubbed by someone else just to complete the film. Jones was an odd choice from the start. He wasn't a seasoned actor. Before he became Flash, he was a semi-pro football player and had posed nude in Playgirl magazine under the fake name Andrew Cooper III. That was in June 1975, the only role he'd done before. Flash Gordon was a tiny part in the 1979 film 10, but he looked like the comic book hero, blonde, muscular, square-jawed, and that was all De Laurentiis needed. Jones had beaten out both Kurt Russell and Arnold Schwarzenegger for the role, but behind the scenes he and De Laurentiis clashed constantly. Their fights got physical. After the movie came out, Playgirl reprinted his photos in January 1981 under his real name, trying to cash in on his sudden fame. The studio had planned to turn the movie into a trilogy, but the fights ruined that too. Melody Anderson, who played Dale Arden, went through her own nightmare for one scene that never even made it into the movie. She had to transform into a giant spider in Flash's hallucination. It took 4 hours just to put on the green body paint and the massive headpiece with real glass eyeballs. Then she sat for 6 more hours, unable to move, dripping fake blood from her mouth. Finally, the director looked at her and said the scene didn't make any sense, and they couldn't use it. 10 hours of torture, all for nothing. That green makeup wouldn't wash off easily either. It was just one example of how disorganized and wasteful the production had become. Brian Bless, who played Prince Voltan, was like a cannon that couldn't be aimed. His voice was so loud that sound engineers couldn't control it. He shouted most of his lines, improvised others, and admitted that he didn't fully understand the plot.